restrooms are down the hall, to the left, turn them around, close to the restaurant. So, I am going to be passing around the sign-in sheet, especially for you guys that it counts towards credit for the communities. So just make sure you sign in, and so we can get a number count. And then if you're not on the email list, feel free, if I've already got your email, then you don't have to put it on there. But if you want to be on the email list, because I send an update usually about about the week before, I'll let everybody know what upcoming presentations that we have. All right, there's food, drinks, all of that in the kitchen behind me, so feel free to get up and get something to eat. We got plenty back there. I'm excited today to introduce Dr. Candessa Tehee, although most of us in the community know her as Pumpkin. So, can I call you Dr. Pumpkin?
Yeah.
A little bit about Dr. Tehee. She is the former manager of the Cherokee language programs at the Cherokee Nation, and she is now the executive director of the Cherokee Heritage Center. She holds a PhD in sociocultural and linguistic anthropology from the University of Oklahoma, where her dissertation focused on the roles of second language learners in Cherokee Nation language revitalization programs. So, thank you for being here, and everyone welcome Dr. Tehee.
Osio, Candessa Tehee, Dawato Yoneg, Seal Wood, Dawato Jalog, Ganya Seho Ia. Nugan Yusadegi, Ju Costly, Jalagi Jundalena Ayeslane, Dogilostane, Jijalagi, Jalagi Gwani Histi, Gadelqua A Uskanolage. Aseno, Ganeltin. Ganle Eliche, Catherine, Ijiale Eliche, Cherokee Community and Cultural Outreach. Basically, what I said was my English name's Candessa Tehee, my Cherokee name is Seal Woy. Ia is Pumpkin, is what they call me. That's just basically what Catherine said. I'm executive director of the Cherokee Heritage Center. I am learning my language slowly, but I try. Like I stand strong. I know I messed that up a little bit, but I am nervous because I'm at home. Oftentimes when I talk, I'm talking far away to people who don't care about Cherokee language the way I do. And that's not the case here. I know everybody here cares as much or more than I do, so it makes me nervous. Some of the things I'm going to say today are hard for me to say, but it's the truth and it's the facts, and we have to face it as a people if we're going to move forward. So I'm going to talk about getting started with Cherokee language learning. Normally, I don't do what they call academic karaoke, which is read the slides to you, but today I'm going to make an exception. And this is a quote from Jacob Manitoa Bailey of the Sauk Language Program. To put this in perspective, the Sauk language has one speaker left. One. They have one speaker left. Think about that and let that sink in. Who does that speaker talk to? We don't want to be there. And they don't want us to be there either. The development of new fluent speakers, teachers, and leaders of an endangered language revitalization effort is a long, complicated, challenging, and often confusing endeavor. Yet if we are serious about the long-term revitalization of our endangered languages, then we must be prepared to face hard facts, ask ourselves difficult questions, and answer them honestly. The takeaway that I want you to have for this presentation is that in order to save our Cherokee language, it's going to require each of us to work, and it's going to require each of us to confront uncomfortable truths. In this talk, it's a big topic, but I'm going to give you a clear overview of how to begin and succeed with language use, specifically in the home. And specifically, this really does target people who aren't already speakers. If you're already a speaker, you got the world, man. You got the world on a string. We're just trying to catch up. I'm going to be quite honest and say some difficult things, but I can't very well stand here and say that once a person chooses to learn and use their language, that a Pocahontas moment happens and there's all the colors of the wind and the clouds open and a rainbow appears and a unicorn comes down and talks to you in Cherokee. That's not what happens. That's not what happens at all. This isn't a fast process, but slow progress is progress. Slow progress is progress. Knowing how to say something you didn't know how to say yesterday is progress. That's progress. Not all of us are going to learn to sound like fluent speakers, and that's okay. Not all of us are going to sound like first language speakers, and that's okay, because we'll still be using our language. Learner language is its own thing. It's its own thing. So I'm going to talk about the experiences and challenges of Indigenous language learning, the benefits, and some strategies for implementation. So first we're going to start with identifying some goals. One of the first questions that we've got to ask ourselves is, where is our language? What is happening with our language? I know a lot of people have seen the post on Facebook from Eastern Band saying they have less than 250 speakers. Like, we look around in this room, there's what, 30 sitting here? Multiply that by 5, and that's how many speakers the entire Eastern Band has. We are a little bit luckier, but not a whole lot. For my language communities, the Tahlequah and Sequoyah County Cherokee communities, there's a difficult question that we have to ask, and that's, why are there no young speakers? I have gone to Cherokee Language Consortium, and I have heard one of our speakers say, it's not that we're losing our language, we're losing people who want to use our language. And I love that speaker. I don't agree with that statement, and I'll tell you why. I'll get to that. I'm not seeking to place blame on anybody by asking these questions. I know that our fluent speakers, most of them, their kids don't speak. Their grandkids don't speak. And they're suffering from as much guilt and shame for that break in the language as we are, and we're the ones who are living it. My generation is the one living it. We feel guilt and shame for not being speakers too. But feeling guilty and feeling ashamed isn't moving our language forward. Oklahoma is a language loss hotspot. It's been identified as a language loss hotspot in the globe. In 1907, there were 48 Native American languages spoken in Oklahoma. Today, there are less than 20. And some of those 20 only have a handful of speakers, like Sauk, like Kaw, like Yuchi. Those are our neighbors. Those are our brothers and sisters, and they barely have any speakers left. And it's common throughout Oklahoma. If you think our language is safe, it's not. In the 5 civilized tribes, these are numbers compiled for a white paper that was done for the 5 civilized tribes. For the 5 civilized tribes language committee. There we go. These were numbers that were compiled, and you see none of these numbers are high. None of them are high. Chickasaw Nation is at 80. Seminole Nation, somewhere around 100. Choctaw Nation, around 600. Creek Nation estimates 3,000. Cherokee Nation estimates 3,000. We don't really know if this number's good or not. This is an estimation. I will say last month we lost 28 fluent speakers. Is that about right? 5 in one county alone. We're losing speakers at a higher rate than we're replacing them. And you have to ask yourself when you're looking at getting started with language, and be honest with yourself. What is the state of your own language knowledge? What do you know? Because if you don't know what you don't know where to start learning. So what do you not know? What do you know? Ask yourself those questions. And I've heard countless times, I've heard somebody tell me, well, when I was younger, I was a fluent Cherokee speaker. Then I went to school and I lost it. And they offer that to me as that's the reason why they're not learning, basically. That's the reason why they're not actively engaged in learning now. Well, I'll tell you something. In high school, I weighed 125 pounds. I'm not going to invite you to guess my weight today, but it's not 125. Spoiler alert. What we used to be is not what we are today. And we can't continue looking at what we used to be as an excuse for what we're not doing today. And sometimes that's confronting an uncomfortable fact. There are people around here who act like this first level novice, they act like that's an insult. And it's not. It's just a statement of where you're at. That's all it is. If I say I'm a novice level potter, people don't make fun of me. If I say I'm an apprentice basket maker, people don't make fun of me. We have got to stop shaming our learners for wanting to learn. And we have got to stop shaming the learners for the language they're using. It is time for us to stop revering speakers that shame learning. That's the only way we're going to move forward. So when you start thinking about what you want to accomplish with your language learning, think about where you want to use your language. You think about what you're trying to accomplish, and you've got to think about how you're going to define success. You've got to think about how you're going to celebrate success. Success is contextual, and the way I define it is not going to be the way that you define it. As a parent of immersion children, I immediately needed survival language so that way I could help them. My daughter started immersion a little bit older, and I will tell you that first month was hard. That first month was really hard, and I made a deal with her, and I said, if you can get through this first month, I'll talk to you about letting you change schools. But luckily for us, PE started, and the rules for dodgeball are the same in English and in Cherokee. So when they were talking about dodgeball in Cherokee, she understood what was going on, and she had a place to hang on. It was comprehensible input. She had a place to hang on, and because she grabbed that finger hold, we were able to hang in there. For us, success was getting up and going to school in the morning. That was our definition of success for a while. At the end of the year, she was performing at the same level as her peers who had been in school for much longer. My friend Ryan Mackey, Wade Galiskewi Ojoseho, he says that fluency is a moving target, and I absolutely agree. Trying to attain fluency is like running toward the horizon. You're never going to get there. But you take steps, you move forward, you make progress with every single move you take. Just because you're not going to reach the horizon doesn't mean you can't keep moving toward it. Because for me, I'm not a fluent Cherokee speaker. I'm still learning. I have to apologize to my elders for my broken Cherokee because I know I don't do as good as I should. And I, luckily, have sympathetic elders who work with me, who listen to me, and make sense of my broken Cherokee and make me feel good about what I'm doing. And that's what you have to find. You have to find people who do that. If there's a speaker who you go to and use language and they make fun of you, why do you keep going and using language with them? Do you go on a picnic and find the only pile of dog ikshi in the whole place and put your blanket next to it? No. That's the equivalent, in my opinion. If you went, I know Charlie Brown keeps kicking that football, but why does he keep going to Lucy to hold it, And that's the issue there. So you need to set small, attainable goals. If you want to learn to function at dinner, then you need to learn dinner words. If you want to learn to function in the morning with your kids, learn those words. If you live with a cat or a dog, Learn the words that you need to talk to your pet. And then your pet's going to know Cherokee. There's a Hopi woman. She lived outside Hopi for a long time. And she lost a lot of her language. Well, when she came back, and this is Sheila Nicholas. She is a renowned language revitalization scholar. She said when she got back home, she was so tentative to speak Hopi to anybody, she was just speaking Hopi to her dog. Well, her dog knew good Hopi, and it gave her the confidence to start using it with other people. So you've got to celebrate successes, small successes. You got to set milestones, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Think about what your resources are. Are there teachers available in your area or online? Institutional. Now, Cherokee Nation is doing a whole lot, and I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. But is your local library, your university, your community center, are there classes, are there learning materials available? Have you asked? Have you checked it out? Have you, picked up the phone and called somebody? Have you sent an email? Have you asked the question? You got to ask the question to know. And then time. What time are you willing to make available for the process of learning? Because this is not fast, this takes time. If you wanted to learn to surf, what would you do first? You read about it. What else? Find an instructor. What else? Get in the water. Get in the water. You're not going to learn to surf from the beach. You have to get in the water. And let me tell you, people, this takes risk. For users of Cherokee who strive to reconcile their indigenous identity with dominant mainstream culture, any amount of competence in the ancestral language provides the possibility for speakerhood. You can't become a speaker until you start making steps towards speakerhood. That means putting the language in your mouth, putting the language in your ears, putting it in front of your eyes. Whatever it is, whatever your learning style is, that's what you have to do. And this is a piece called Language on the Brain by my friend, artist Jeff Edwards. That's what we have to do. But the bottom line, be brave. You have to be brave. The learning process, you have to humble yourself by admitting what you don't know so you can start learning the things you don't know. It's real hard to teach a know-it-all, ain't it? I see a lot of heads nodding. You know what I mean. It's hard to teach somebody that knows it all. If we want to learn, we can't act like we know it all. We have to humble ourselves and admit what we don't know. In the book, Bringing Our Languages Home, edited by Leanne Hinton, she shares a vignette from Richard Grounds. He was a language learner. He still is a language learner. He's Yuchi. He's a real strong language advocate, language warrior. And what Richard said was that when he learned a word to use with his family, he replaced it. So if he learned how to say, wake up, and in Cherokee, here you go, wake up. But that's to one person. Replace it. Now, only one of my kids is in a room, so when I open the door, I say, here you go, get up, wake up. He says that if you replace the English you have with your language learning as you go, then you build and you build and you build. Because you have to use a word at least 40 different times in different contexts. You can't just say it 40 different times. You actually have to use it. And if you make that personal to you and what your interests are, there's a better chance that you're going to retain it. So rather than wait for complete knowledge, you just have to begin. So some experiences and challenge of Indigenous language learning, and this is specific to Cherokee Nation. When language begins shifting and losing vitality, speakerhood almost becomes an identity in itself. Being Cherokee is a noun. It's based on who you are, how you look. To be Cherokee is to look Cherokee. To look Cherokee is to speak Cherokee. Instant Indian, wannabe. I think we've all heard a lot of these different things. But it's an ideology of legitimacy, of who's allowed to learn. And you know what? I'll just break this apart right now. We're all allowed to learn. It doesn't matter who you look like, where you come from, what your background is, what you're doing right now, what you were doing yesterday. You're allowed to learn today. Here in Cherokee Nation, a lot of people think speakerhood is about, being a speaker is about more than language. People talk about how being a Cherokee speaker is a revered position. I would never see myself that way. I couldn't refer to myself as that. And this is someone who has spent a lot of time using the language, is a language advocate. And these are from my dissertation research. I wouldn't call myself a speaker. It would be an affront for me to call myself a speaker. It's out of respect. It's a personal choice I make out of respect for elders' knowledge. See, this respect is a good thing. But in some ways, for language revitalization, you've got to stop putting people on a pedestal, because if you put them on a pedestal, you're not going to get there. You have to realize that in this environment, our speakers at our current generation, most of them didn't actively make the choice to learn. They learned it at home. Their parents made that choice for them. Well, if our parents had made that choice for us, we would know it too. And that's something we have to realize. So, for the Tahlequah Cherokee community, speaker is about more than linguistic competency. Speakerhood, it's neither granted nor assumed. It's negotiated and constructed. You have to prove you're a speaker. It's about community, the ability to communicate competently, meaning that, in Cherokee communities, there's kind of a way of talking to each other. And if you can't really do that, if you break those social norms, oftentimes your speakerhood gets called into question. The ability to use the language, and your family. Who are you connected to? How are you connected? These are all things that play into what a speaker is here. But what are some benefits of learning? One thing I want to say is you're not alone. You're not alone in trying to learn a second language. And I love this picture because it feels like Cherokee's just all over him, ain't it? That's how we want to be. We want to have so much Cherokee in us, it's just popping out. That's what we want to be like. The U.S. Census Bureau reported that 1 in 5 residents speaks a foreign language at home and records, and that's a record 61.8 million, and that's in 2013. That's up from 2.2 million since 2010. Of that number, 44% or 27.2 million are U.S.-born citizens. There's this notion out there that English only is best. I've heard it over and over again. I had a reading tutor. I overheard a reading tutor telling a girl, "You use Chinese in China. You use English here." Icky. BS. We are made to be multilingual. The U.S. has always been a multilingual place. The Republic of Texas published its Constitution in English, German, and Spanish. Why? Because they wanted people to understand. For some reason, we as Americans have lost that. Well, we as Cherokees can force them to change their minds. Becoming a speaker, I want to ask you something. With babies, what do they start with first? Listening, right? They start with listening. What comes next? Talking. What comes after that? Reading and writing. So if you put reading and writing first, if that's where your emphasis is, that's fine. And learning the syllabary, if you're dedicated, you can learn the syllabary in a week. You know what? You can wait on that. What good is learning the syllabary if you don't know what you're saying, or know what you're reading, or know what you're writing? What good is that? So I'm not saying this isn't a good thing. I'm not saying Sequoia wasn't a genius. What I'm saying is, if you're starting at 0, you probably shouldn't, this is probably not your priority. Your priority is this and this. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. All right. Bilingualism. There's this notion in the United States, and I've heard this from our own Cherokee people. They act like if you learn Cherokee, it takes something away from your English, and that is just not true. Bilingual speakers have a greater brain elasticity. It staves off Alzheimer's for 5 to 6 years. It doesn't make you immune to it, but it staves it off for 5 to 6 years. You have multiple referential systems, and that doesn't mean 2 different ways to say dog. It's 2 different ways to think about it. As a matter of fact, your language centers are in different places. I think everybody's heard of someone that suffered a stroke and has lost their second language or has lost their first language. It's because your language, especially second language, lives in a different part of your brain. So if you exercise that part of your brain, you're not using it anyway, but if you learn that second language, you'll be using it. So you're increasing your brain function and your brain activity. And children, when introduced to a language, learn to critically solve problems earlier. Now this is an example, this is the Cherokee National Female Seminary, the second one that's over where NSU is now. I want you to take note of this class size. The next thing I'm going to show you is my daughter's graduating class from 2013. Do you notice a difference? The size, right? Because for some reason, people are scared of Cherokee language. When I'm at my son's baseball games and I say, Dayan, squash les hictos des. That's watch the ball, and his name's Dayan. I say, Dayan, watch the ball. It's like I dropped a bomb or something. And everybody just gets quiet and kind of is like, whoa. And I don't know if it's because I'm brown and it ain't Spanish, or if it's just, it wows people and it scares people and people back away from it. Well, this is our language. We need to be running toward it. Here's a cartoon. It has some language in it. I apologize. English should be the national language. These immigrants should have to learn English when they come here. And somebody's like, yeah. When you go to live somewhere, you learn the language they speak there. English is the language of the land. Excuse me, but Osio, Sarah Dawadon. So what the heck was that? Cherokee. We were here first. This is the language of the land. Don't apologize for learning your language. Don't be afraid to stand up and tell somebody, well, you're putting your kids at a disadvantage. Where are you going to use that? How are you going to make money off of it? Well, guess what? Cherokee Nation has whole career tracks now off being speakers. You can teach in the schools. You can teach at universities. Yeah, this is a career now. You know why? Hardly anybody's left. That's why. Because we were worried too much about what your next thing? Ain't it? So strategies for support at home. Develop a list of milestones. You need to think, what is it that I want to accomplish? Do I want to be able to talk to my kids? And here's the thing too. If you use your home learning environment, then you're going to have quality time investment. It's going to be personal. It's going to be relatable. So instead of going, okay, saw taught jointnak here sudagakog chanel sontnail. Oh, I've learned how to count to 10. Think, well, how many couches do I have in my living room? Sawu. How many kids do I have? Jont. I have jont deniol. Or jont dequage. That's the way that you have to think about things. You have to make it personal for you, because that's the only way you're really going to learn it and know it. And the best place to start is at home. People are ready for the rewards of language learning, but must also be prepared for the challenge. I think that's why so many people will, especially outside, the further you get from Tahlequah, for some reason the more speakers you find who don't want to use the language. And I suspect it's because they probably don't know the language. Because there is, there's something, it makes you feel important to say you're a speaker. And if you don't have to prove it, then you can say it all you want. I've run into people like that. But it doesn't do our language any good. One of the things that we need to face, too, is that our communities are sick. Domestic violence, drug abuse, economic hardships. At one time, our communities were so bound together that the U.S. federal government said they couldn't find poverty here. And that was why they did allotment for us, to try to break up the community landmass. So that way, it was an absence of ambition that was holding Cherokees back, when in reality, we were taking care of each other. Language is an indicator of community health too. You got to have someone to talk to. It's social. And where does that start? That starts at home. And I'm going to say something, and I'm not trying to be critical of Cherokee Nation, because Cherokee Nation is doing a lot. But the government's not going to save our language. We are. I am. You are. You are, and you are. The government can give us tools, they can give us programs, but if we're not using the language, they're for naught. Nurturing the language has to happen at home, and it has to be constant. You don't need to nurture English. Can everyone here name at least 20 children that are first language English speakers under the age of 5? No one has a problem with that. Can everyone here arrange for a place to go where they can be immersed in English? Heck yeah, go to Walmart, ain't it? Yeah, everyone can arrange to be immersed in English. Now ask yourself the question, how many kids do I know that are learning and using Cherokee? Have you spoken Cherokee to a child today? Ask yourself the question, can I arrange to go and be immersed in my language? Now, a lot of people will say our ceremonial centers, our Cherokee Methodist churches, our Cherokee Baptist churches, and our Cherokee Stomping Grounds is a place where that can happen. But let's be honest, is it? No, our older folks are there using language with each other. There might be a sermon or some songs in the language, but all the rest of the language that's happening there is English. We have to be honest. We have to say difficult things. It makes us feel better to say our church service is completely in Cherokee. But let's be honest. Is it? No, it's not. You have to nurture Cherokee language. You have to nurture it. Each and every single person has to nurture it. You have to care about it, and you have to grow it like it's a living thing, because it is. You have to feed it. That's what you have to do. We want our world to be Cherokee. I like it because all these planets are Cherokee. I think even Pluto's on there. So who's responsible for leading the activities that you're going to be taking part in? Is it you? Are you going to go see a teacher? When you get home, how are you going to utilize these things? How are you going to interact with other learners? Start small and grow. Nurture the language. You might consider, when you start learning, tape yourself. I know nobody likes being on camera. Nobody likes recording themselves. But tape yourself. And then in 6 months, 3 months, in a year, tape yourself again. You will then see the progress you've made and the difference that you've made with your language learning. Because it's really hard for you to see your own language learning. It's really, really hard. You know, at least with clothes, you wake up one day and your pants don't fit and you know you're bigger. You know, language don't really work like that. It just doesn't. So you've kind of got to be responsible for trying to measure your own progress. Because if you don't measure and celebrate your own progress, you're going to get discouraged and you're not going to see where you're making the progress. This is a piece of artwork from artist America Meredith, done in 2012. London Calling, 1762. And these are the 3 kings that visited England in 1762. But when I look at this piece, what I see is there was 3 Cherokee men, thousands of miles away from home. And where they walked, they brought who they were with them. Where they walked, they made that space Cherokee. That's what we have to do. That's our responsibility. No one is going to give us the space unless we take it. And that's what we have to do. That's the mindset that we have to walk through the day with. No language community is in a position to ignore the needs of language learners. There is going to be challenges to you We are used to, as English speakers, being able to say anything we want. So we get discouraged with Cherokee because we can't say anything we want. Cherokee has something called a lateral fricative in linguistic terms. And basically you have to take the tip of your tongue, put it right behind where your teeth meet the roof of your mouth, and you blow. It's present in words like clan. And you will hear people who are learning, like the word clamehan, they'll say like claw, like a cat claw. Well, that's not the correct pronunciation. But how do you get better and train your tongue to do what it needs to do without saying the word? You have to say the word. You have to say the word. And you're going to sound funny when you begin, and it's not going to be right when you first begin. But does anybody remember their first day driving a car or learning how to drive a car? Were you perfect the first day that you learned how to drive a car? No, absolutely not. So why do we expect it of language learners? That's the only place we expect it. Learners are going to make mistakes. Everyone has to be understanding of that reality. The creation of safe space for learning and natural errors in speech is vital. That's why I say find someone who is a safe, sympathetic teacher that you can work with, or work with other learners. And here's something that I'm going to say that's hard for me to say. All of our speakers are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. We, my generation, we are going to outlive our speakers. Think about that for just a second. Our speakers thirst for us to use the language. Our speakers hunger for us to use the language. We have to use the language. Remember how I talked about that speaker at Symposium who said we're not losing our language, we're losing people that want to use our language? I want to use our language. I've been scared to use our language because I didn't want to say things wrong. All my elders and my beloved Cherokee speakers see is I'm not using it. And they don't know why. They assume it's because I don't care about it. When in truth, I care about it with all my heart. It's why I came back to Cherokee Nation. I could be anywhere in this world. I have a PhD. I'm a full-blood Cherokee citizen. I'm an Indian woman. And let me tell you, universities on the East Coast would love to have me. I choose to be here because I love our language, and this is where our speakers are. So me being afraid to use our language is not me being a language advocate. So I have stepped forward and I'm trying to use our language more. I'm not a fluent speaker. I don't make claims to be a fluent speaker, but people who are uneducated with the language or with what the language sounds like assume I sound real good just because I don't sound real yonig when I'm saying the words. So it's contextual. It is contextual. Rob can hear I'm not a fluent speaker, but hey, I'm not going to pick on nobody in here. No. But you know, someone who's not a speaker, who's not in our community, you know, they can't hear that and they think I'm the speaker. You got to use the language. You got to use the language. So now some resources. I said before, our government is doing a lot. Cherokee Nation is doing a lot. Cherokee Nation Language Program, we have manager of the Cherokee Language Program, Roy Boney Jr., in the audience with us. He is doing a wonderful job of making content available and helping to facilitate people's learning. At the Cherokee Nation Language Program, there's links for content downloads. I mean, there is just all kinds of stuff if you just go access it. There's also a link to a language learning center. There's links to online language classes. And Ed Fields is a good way, it's a good way to get your feet wet and start getting in the water with Cherokee language. I'm going to go kind of fast, so Catherine says that this is going to be available. So, and I'm happy to make this PowerPoint available too, Catherine. Cherokee Language Technology Program, again, part of the Cherokee Nation Language Program. Information on how to turn on Cherokee on your operating systems. And I'll say, I know people talk bad about technology all the time, but Cherokees have always grabbed technology, run with it, and made it our own. From the first telephone to the printing press to using beads in our finger weaving. I mean, at one point, that was technology. We've always taken it and made it our own. We don't need to be scared of technology. We need to use it to suit us. We need to use it to serve us. Because of this phone, I use Cherokee every day. Every day, because my operating system is in this phone. I got elders that will text me in Cherokee, but might not talk Cherokee to me in the hallway. And in some ways, I have time to think about what I'm going to say back and try to get it right using this. So there's information there on how to get started with that and how to turn it on your operating systems, including your computers and phones. Maybe not your smartphone. There's some, your Droid. Maybe not your Droid. There's some challenges there still. Cherokee Deaconaisti. It's Cherokee word list. It's a searchable word list. Hey, I was really playing this. I heard Rob really laughing, saying, "Who's mad?" over there when I came in.
Who's not lying?
Basically, that's it. She's mad, ain't it?
Who's not lying?
Yeah, but that's crap. That's there. That's there for you. Crap. There we go. Okay, sorry, but that's there for you, and it says mad, but it's really he, she, or it is mad, but you can hear it. That's the place to hear it, and one word at a time. Another resource, and I think this is a really, really underutilized resource by most people who want to learn the language. What did I say? You need to hear it. By the time a child's a year old, they've heard over 100. They've heard thousands, hundreds of thousands of words. That's been pouring into them. Well, we don't have that opportunity, most of us who are seeking to learn a language. But if you visit this website, there are hours and hours of Cherokee language and Cherokee songs. And it also airs locally through Rogers State University, and you can actually visit that website and get that information. Dennis Sixkiller, he's a speaker, he's a host, and he's always looking for speakers to interview. He says it's getting harder and harder to find them. Cherokee Nation Youth Choir, do you like to sing? Do you like to listen to music? Well, this is Cherokee language music right here. You can get that hymn book and you can listen to these words. They use words like Galan Lod, up high. Unetlana, God. They use words like that in these songs. Skisteliski, help me. They use words like that in these songs. These are words that you can learn from these songs. You can hear these songs. Available iTunes, Amazon, and Cherokee Nation gift shop. Do you like books? Well, guess what? There's Cherokee language books. Durbin Fielding's Cherokee English Dictionary, Brad Montgomery Anderson's Cherokee Reference Grammar, Beginning Cherokee, Ruth Bradley Holmes and Betty Sharp Smith, all available. Amazon, maybe even your local bookstore. You may be able to go to your local library and get a copy. People are online crowdsourcing a Cherokee dictionary. The core data is from Durbin Fielding's Cherokee English Dictionary. Cherokee Language Program Manager Roy Boney told me about that. If you like an online discussion, online community, there's a place to go. Another resource, a lot of people around here know Tom Belt. He's at Western Carolina University, but he's an Oklahoma boy. Hundreds and hundreds of videos on there. And what they do is they basically tape like a short process so you see what's happening and you hear what's happening. And they call that in language revitalization and things like that, comprehensible input. Go there and watch those videos. It's free of charge. It doesn't cost anything. Another resource, Mango Language Learning App for Cherokee. You have to check with your local library to see if they're a subscriber. If your local library is a subscriber, then you can access it. It's a really neat language app. Fluent speakers are speaking, John Ross and Anna Sixkiller. It was a collaboration through the Cherokee Language Program and the Mango Company. But again, it's available for free through your subscribing local library. So ultimately, what you really have to do is identify your goals and resources. There are going to be challenges in your learning, but there's challenges in all learning. And you have to give yourself permission to not be 100% perfect when you're trying to use your language. Because guess what? Fluent speakers aren't perfect when they use their language. As an English speaker, is every single sentence you say all day long, every day, grammatically correct, 100%? Do you even speak in complete sentences most of the time when you're in conversation? If you pay attention, most people don't. And that's why sometimes when you hear dialogue on TV, if it sounds really stilted and kind of artificial, it's because it's written all in complete sentences, because that's not how people talk. ACTFL, the American Council for the Teaching of Foreign Languages, says that most people in their first language that they're fluent in operate at the advanced level. Do you remember those 5 levels that I showed you? Novice, intermediate, advanced, master. Most people operate in the middle in their first language. So why do you expect yourself to operate at the master level as a learner? And why do speakers expect learners to operate at the master level in the beginning? If we want to nurture and grow our language, we got to stop that expectation. Here's some references if you're interested. And I hope I didn't offend anybody. And if I did, I'm sorry. And if I did, you might want to think about why I offended you. Is it because you feel guilty? Because you're not using and learning the language? Is it because you feel guilty that you're not teaching the language? Is it because you feel ashamed? And me asking these difficult questions has made you think about that? So I do apologize if I offended somebody. But instead of walking out mad, think about what offended you and why it did. Y disco da. I'm done.